taken actually Fido in the team in there, but currently Waku has been here in Western, and ever since he left Western Province Project, he has never been into a match into football. Of course, he worked with a couple of other clubs actually in the big league. You remember, he worked at Juman Town Council way back when they were still playing the big league. When the team got actually relegated, that's when things never went actually well for him, and he came back. He worked with young villas of this world. He worked with Koboko Rising Stars. Even he is really someone who is known of actually football. Of course, he has got that potential of actually scouting players. He has got a very good record when it comes to his football actually done in there. Of course, what best he's known of his game approach. Of course, coaches are known of good game approach. Of course, he actually had that perfectly. In him, that's the coach in the names of Work Tribe in there. Remember, during his actual playing times, he was working. Actually, he was playing for St. John's College Onduparaka. Remember, he's an OB of that school, and he has been really someone to talk about. That's in the name of Work Tribe. Many of the Westerners don't know much about him. It's only that a few people know about Work Tribe. Of course, there were talks about Ogon who was supposed to come in as the head coach, but I can confirm to you that Onduparaka only decided to appoint Work Tribe as the head coach of the team. Then they appointed one of the most actually respected coaches in northern Uganda, who actually worked here in Western in the names of Peter John Ogondia. Remember, Ogondia worked at Calvary Football Club. Actually, in that team of Calvary Football Club, he was really spared in that team perfectly. After that, he came to a team in the names of Arua City Football Club in the regional league. Things never worked actually very well for him. He left the Arua City Football Club. Then he joined Black's Power after Black's Powers, and then that's when he crossed over to join the team the next of Buhimba Saints United. You remember, at Buhimba Saints United, he managed to finish 6th last season in the Betpa Football Big League in there. That's Don Ogonde for. So he'll be working closely with a coach in the names of Work Tribe Sabasaba. You remember, both Ogonde and Waku will be working closely. Waku signs a 1-year renewable contract at Onduparaka Football Club, and then a coach in the names of Peter Ogonde signed a 2-year contract with Onduparaka Football Club. Something which I think is very, very much beautiful in there. Of course, a team that has been much lagging behind of a lot of things. I think appointing these coaches probably speaks volume about Onduparaka Football Club. Of course, these are people who have got that unique idea about football. Of course, we know Work Tribe in terms of talent development. He's much known of that. We talk about Peter John Ogonde. He's also much into that. Remember, this is the project where Onduparaka Football actually is doing badly when it comes to finances, and things are not really clicking very well for Onduparaka Football Club. So they thought it very wise that the new board spearheaded by Buti. I think Galdino is one of the beautiful things that the band actually taught. And to see that Onduparaka Football Club needs to be run by a different management, of course, giving them that priority to spare the project that they are launching now is something that I think really needs to be appreciated, and Western needs to give an eye to this club. To this club. Of course, this has been the pride of Western. Of course, without Onduparaka Football Club, we never even enjoy football here in Western. Of course, much as we do have got other teams like Calvaries of this world, the Blackens of this world, but Onduparaka actually stood very firm in there in terms of football development. So many of the Western players came into light just because of Onduparaka Football Club. Of course, we all know what Onduparaka did best in the actual season. Remember, they went actually unbeaten that time when they crossed over to the sometimes Ghana Premier League. They only lost to Vipers when the Vipers managed to beat them in the Ghana Cup. Remember, that was one of the most actually decorated games that has got a lot of actually attention actually in that regard in there. More just actually Engineer Moses Magogo was pleased with the performance that the teams put forth. Even Lawrence Molindo, the proprietor of Vipers, was really actually amazed with the performance of Onduparaka way back that time in there. Then Onduparaka also this time around have gone for a coach, fitness coach in the names of Onama Bosco, who is actually spearheading that team of Koboko. You remember, he is the head coach of Sensas Luanga of Koboko. Remember, this team has qualified to play in the round of 16 just recently after beating St. John's College Onduparaka 3-1 on aggregate. Remember, in Koboko, Luanga managed to beat a team in the name of Onduparaka 1-0, and then after here, they finally did see that a team in the names of Luanga managed to beat Onduparaka by 2 goals to 1 in the meaning on aggregate. Sensas Luanga managed to go past but by what we call by 3 goals to 1 aggregate, something that actually is worth appreciating from one of the most talented coaches that we do have got in the names of will be the fitness coach at Onduparaka Football Club. Remember, he has signed a 2 years contract with the Onduparaka Football Club. I think that's one of the beautiful things that I think we need to look into. Integrity is there. So one of the coaches that Onduparaka has actually signed in is a goalkeeping coach in the name of Okello Tony. Remember, Okello Tony has been one of they are more so closely with the John Ogonde in there. But I think coming back to Onduparaka OS Western is something that is worth appreciating. To go back to the Southern Uganda Premier League, of course, play in the big league. Comes with a lot of course in there. Recently, that FIFA has actually kind of supervised to play games in the bed football big league in there. Of course, the team also appointed other technical teams. You remember, Walter Bazagli, you can call him normal Walter, has been appointed as the marketing, actually in charge of marketing and communication. Remember, he'll be spearheading that team. And then they do have got one of the most actually decorated journalists in the region, and he's one of the FIFA administrators that we do have got in Western in the names of Papito Devgan. Him here, he'll be, the CEO of Onduparaka Football Club. You see, all these brains that Onduparaka has brought in, these people who have got that football brain in them. Of course, Walter Bazagli being a football journalist as well, working with one of the most powerful media houses actually we do have got in Western, even in Uganda. That's Radio Parties. Walter Bazagli comes with a lot of actual experience in his role of marketing and communication. You see, he has got that value of marketing and giving out authentic information about the club. That's Walter Bazagli for you. And then Papito Devigan, he has got that actual connection with different players in the country. Of course, that CEO role comes with a lot of issues in there. Of course, he'll be spearheading that team of Onduparaka Football Club. Everything that runs there, sack anyone there, him and Buti the reasons as to why Onduparaka Football Club will be running their affairs in the Betpa Football Big League in there. So probably all these technical teams that Onduparaka has brought in, I think these are right people that I think and actually can take this team very far in the when it comes to preparations in there. Of course, Onduparaka Football Club being the powerhouse of Western football, I think these people can be clicking very well to see that this team actually moves out very smoothly in there. But one of the biggest thing is the players leaving this team of the Football Club. We've seen a number of them leaving this club. Of course, one of the latest is Andama Junior, who has actually crossed over to South Sudan. Of course, they were linked about Geroh FC. In the current as I talk, Andama Junior is already in South Sudan. Then the likes of Bidai Jeras of this world, they already in Jammus. You have players like Bonga of this world. Remember, Bonga has been that Geroh post out the position from the Black Football Club for a number of seasons. He has crossed over to South Sudan already. This clearly says that there's need for the Black Football Club to look for players in there. So the new board and the technical thought it very well that they really need to have one trial for this team. Of course, to see that players really need to come on board to see that they have got a formidable squad, to see that this team goes forward to the next level. Of course, they have given up actually a green light to see that players need to come actually for trials. Of course, they are saying that on the 19th of this very month, that's when this is one of the biggest things that I thought the board has done for the Black Football Club. Of course, we all know players want to play for this team, and currently the team doesn't have money to see that the club activities are run. Of course, you can't sign players who have got the heart of playing for you. Of course, you know the money aspect is one of the biggest thing in the game of football. So the Black Football Club doesn't have that actually at their disposal currently. Remember, their actually Ababetatu contract is kind of still uncertain. Of course, we never know whether Ababet will come back to support this team. Of course, the biggest thing is they signed a 2 years contract from the Football Club, and their contract term was kind of on performance basis. So if you look at how the has been performing last season in the Betpa Football Big League, it has never been so well for the Football Club. Of course, this is where Onduparaka taught it very well that they needed to give back to the people of Western, to the people of Ghana, to see that if you're talented, just have to come on board and come with your attires. What's the most important thing for you is just to come with your national ID, then come with always a passport photo. Those are the most preferred things that are needed for a player in there. Of course, when they see that you're kind of talented, that's when they can actually recruit you actually into their books in there. Of course, all these players who are coming for trials are coming actually without any facilitation. As a player, you come with everything for yourself. Of course, Onduparaka Football Club will never provide that for you. In case they identify you that you have all the talent, that's when they cannot start actually supporting you with some of the allowances, some of their combination issues. That's when you'll be a member of that technical team of Onduparaka Football Club. Remember, they had their fans meeting today at the Grand Stadium. So we're going to see the outcome of that. Of course, that is one of the most actually decorated things, so that the fans are connected to the management, so that the club activities are actually smoothly. Of course, we have seen Onduparaka Football Club being actually punished by FIFA because of hooligan. When at the Golden Stadium, fans were rioting, fans were not really actually good with the officiation. So some of these things, if you address very well, that's when the club can go forward. That's Onduparaka Football Club for you in there. So that's one of the beautiful things that I thought the board and the technical team has done to see that this team comes back to light. Of course, where does the fate of Onduparaka Football Club lie with all these new recruits? I think the team is trying to pick up very well. Of course, these are the people who have got that football brain. I think they can be spearheading this team perfectly in there. Of course, Papito Devigan, the CEO, being a sports journalist, he can spot actually good players. Walter Bazak being a sports journalist as well, he can spot actually good players. And the likes of Onama Bosco, we all know him of naturally good talent. Players like Innocent Medias of this world, the Sanges of this world, these players who came, to the ranks of Onama Bosco. Then I could talk about Peter Dono going there with Calvo Pukak. He has done that on tremendous and worked twice as well. These are people who got that brain. I think what's not being known on football, these guys can take Onduparaka Football Club to their next mandate if the management doesn't disappoint them. That's according to me. I think Onduparaka Football Club fit is actually at a better position per now. That's my observation about this team of Onduparaka Football Club in there. Just in case of anything, which I'll let you know of anything that is transpiring into this team of Onduparaka in terms of everything. Of course, we are so much connected. Department of the team, probably every information that comes there, we shall always give it live for you about Onduparaka Football Club in there. Let me give you just about an information. Team Nebisen Football Club that will be playing in the one of the biggest coaches in the names of Geoffrey Kenya. You remember, Geoffrey Kenya comes from northern Uganda, and he has actually got one of the beautiful moments. Of course, he has got that calf B to his name, and he is the right man for that team of Nebisen Football Club. But remember, last season, he was the brain behind team Cavaliers after the move to the Southern Ghana Premier League. Of course, he was actually at the helm of Calvary in the last season. Of course, he doesn't have that qualified papers to spearhead this team in what we call the Southern Ghana Premier League. Of course, for you to be the head coach of a team in the Southern Ghana Premier League, you need to have what we call the CAF A. So, Kenya lacks that, and that means that he is capable with his CAF B to spare that team of Nebi Central. So good to see that all these figures come back to football and see that what now takes a mantle into Ghana football. Having all these teams, maybe by the Black Angels, Onduparaka Football Club, and then Nebi Central Football, all in the Southern Ghana Premier League would be our pride. That's something that I thought it would work. For those who doesn't know much about it, I needed to let you know about that one in there. Let's talk about NEC Football Club, who will be playing for the first time in continental soccer. Remember, they finished second. Of course, Vipers managed to of course, Vipers managed to win the Southern Uganda Premier League, and again they won what we call the Uganda Cup. So the team that wins the Uganda Cup is always the team that represents us in what we call the CAF Confederations Cup. So meaning Vipers won both trophies, the Southern Uganda Premier League and the Confederations Cup. So in that regard, the team that finishes second, that's a team in the names of NEC, has been granted that opportunity to represent us at Continental Showpiece. Of course, this is the maiden season to play in a Continental Showpiece. Of course, CAF has actually allocated a significant increase in the money that will be given to these clubs, around $350 US. This is some money that, if you convert it into Ugandan currency, it is something which is very, very big in there. And Team NEC play in that competition for the first time would be a team to actually represent us in there. So their fate has been known. The team that they'll be playing in this competition has been actually official confirmed. Remember, this was confirmed today in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam in there, and this team will be playing against a team in the names of Nairobi United. You remember, Nairobi United plays in Kenya, and this team in the names of NEC will be playing against a team in the names of Nairobi United, and this is where NEC will start this game at home here at MTN Omoni Stadium. You remember, NEC shares the same stadium with the KCCA, so this is when we shall be seeing NEC Football Club making amends in what we call the Confederation Cup. For the first time, of course, they have actually got a number of good name players in there. They've appointed new players in there. So this means that the NEC have actually prepared appropriately to see that this team is actually well represented in the Continental Showpiece. Of course, after that, in case NEC beats a team in the names of Nairobi, a team in the names of Al Ahly of Egypt, or as a story of Tunisia. So this is one of the beautiful things. Is that a one-leg thing? The moment you go past that, definitely you'll be into the draws of the CAF Confederation Cup. This is something that I thought is worth that NEC won't take actually at ease. Of course, Hossein Balang with his tactics, and a coach in the names of Dudu Bosco. I think these guys are clicking very well actually at NEC. I think the motivation level in the team of NEC is kind of superb in there. I think this is something that is really worth actually to talk about. Of course, these teams are really doing amazingly well when it comes to domestic football. NEC has been the powerhouse recently in Uganda, giving Vipers hard times to see that they really wanted us to win the Southern Uganda Premier League. That's NEC for you. So can they make us very proud to see that beating a team in the names of Nairobi United is something that I think NEC has got the capability of doing that. Of course, they have got the players at their disposal. Remember, the club chairman is someone who loves football. The finance is always there. If he can be important to give these players that actual motivation, probably we could be seeing NEC representing us in the CAF Confederation Cup. Of course, this is the Europa League of African football. In case NEC goes past this, I think this is something worth appreciating. You understand? So, Vipers is as well the next team. So we are yet going to see which team that Vipers will be playing in what we call the CAF Confederation Cup. I mean, in the CAF Champions League. Of course, this is the biggest that Vipers will be playing. In case Vipers also manage to go through, that will be our pride as well here in the country. Of course, it's only the KCCA and Vipers who has gone past the preliminary stages. Can they make us proud? The two clubs in the country, NEC and Vipers, with the Vipers waiting for a foreign court in the names of Ivan Zaki. Can Zaki, with the Freedom Humuza, make amends for Vipers? Of course, we all know Molindo is someone who is much into results. He is the Roman Abramovich of Ugandan football. If result doesn't come on your way, if you don't win trophies, that's when he can actually decide to send you away. That's Molindo for you in there. So can all these actually coaches make us proud? Is the $1 million question that every Ugandan is asking about these teams in there. So we are yet going to see how these teams will be making us proud. KCC are prepared very well for the Southern Ghana Premier League. They are really extremely prepared. NEC is also preparing. The Southern Ghana Premier League is set to kick off very soon. So we don't know how all these clubs will be actually balanced in their books. Remember playing Continental Showpiece, and again here you are playing the Southern Ghana Premier League. You are playing the Uganda Cups. You remember, it's not going to be an easy thing for a club like NEC. You really need to have that squad depth. You need to have that balance to see that in case of injuries, one player needs to come in on board to see that you are kind of relieved. Of course, playing continental topics, you really needed to have experienced players who have got that continental brain, who have got that IQ of playing at that high level of football. Of course, I think Vipers kind of has that actually at their disposal. Of course, they do have got one of the beautiful things actually at their disposal. Of course, they are really a very good team. Of course, they have got experience, and their coach is someone who has got that brain of African football. He has been here in Africa for a long period of time. He has worked actually in Morocco. He has worked actually in Egypt. He has worked in South Africa. He has worked in Rwanda. So probably this is not an opportunity for him to assemble a very good team at Vipers to see that the Vipers goes into the next level. Then a team in the names of NEC being the maiden season. I think this is where the morale will be behind them. The fans are always very supportive. That's NEC Football Club. Remember recently they did actually have got that support, that trophy being given, that award being given to the best performing players, to the best coaches. Remember, this is something that is over appreciated, and the project is really working very well. That's for these two great clubs. Of course, Molindwa as well promising big for the players. Remember, this is something that is worth appreciating. Let's talk about the latest CAF CAF ratings. Remember, this is where CAF rates which club is the best or is the biggest club in Africa for now. Of course, when you look at the CAF ratings, of course, the biggest club in Africa, of course, is Al Hilal of Egypt. Of course, remember they are the powerhouse of African football. Of course, they have won the CAF Champions League for 12 times. That's Team Al Hilal for you. Of course, with the latest CAF rankings, this is actually a ranking based on how you've been performing, how you've been winning trophies. Of course, Team Al Hilal of Egypt has been dominating African football actually when it comes to Champions League of in the last 6 seasons. They've won it 5 times, and they have been doing this consistently. That's Al Hilal of Egypt for you, and they are the best team in Africa for now. Of course, Vipers of Uganda is at 57th position in Africa in terms of the FIFA rankings. What does that one mean for Vipers? Then here in Uganda, they are the first. When it comes to rankings in here, of course, they're the best in Uganda. That's Vipers for you. Then, in continental rankings, they are at number 57th. Remember, this is something that I thought I needed to give to your attention. Of course, Mamelodi Sundowns of South Africa comes second when it comes to FIFA rankings there. And then the third is Esperance of Tunisia that comes in that regard. And then the fourth team is Bakane of Morocco. They come after the fourth, and then Simba of Tanzania comes fifth. Then Pyramids of Egypt comes sixth. Then seventh is Zamalek. And then Morocco comes at number 8. And then at number 10 we have got USM Algiers of Algeria. And then we do have got number 10, a team in the names of Bazaludad of Algeria. Remember, it's mostly the North African teams dominating the latest African, FIFA, CAF rankings. What does Sub-Saharan Africa are not really doing very well when it comes to when it comes to football in there. Does it mean the teams that are playing in East Africa are not really doing that well in there? Of course, we have seen after the Sudan being represented actually very well by a team in the names of Al Hilal. Of course, sitting 11th in CAF rankings, above you even Ugandan teams. Remember, most people have been talking about South Sudan League. So many people underrated South Sudan League, but this creator says that the South Sudan League is better than even Ugandan football. Of course, if you have a team in the names of Al Hilal in the 11th position in the latest CAF rankings, that speaks volume about the infrastructure development. That speaks volume about the level of football. You see, this is something that I think Moses Magogo, the FIFA president, needs to look into nitty-gritties. Of course, he needed to give attention to Ghana football. He really needed to up his actual management into Ghana football. Of course, we needed to have teams like KCCA, teams like AC Villa up there. Of course, no team in Uganda has won the CAF Champions League, even the CAF Confederation Cup. No team has won that. Of course, in the latest CAF rankings, teams in Uganda are really that these things are not actually really going very well actually when it comes to African football. Really, this is something that I thought really caught my attention, and I let you know. Of course, this is where you're getting this, and you never get this one anywhere. I'm telling you. Of course, this is where we give you the best when it comes to sports. Of course, Sunrise TV is always here to see that we give you the best in terms of our coverage when it comes to football. We shall never leave any club untouched. Of course, we shall here be going club to club in case of anything. We shall never leave you behind in there. Let's talk about international football. Of course, time is really going very fast in there. One of the biggest is actually at Manchester United, that they have their last preseason actual game today. You remember they played against Fiorentina of Italy. Then this is what we call the Snapdragon actual trophy. And they remember the Snapdragon logo is actually sponsored both United and Fiorentina. Then Manchester United managed to beat a team in the names of Fiorentina in penalty shootouts. Remember, normal minutes ended 1-1. It ended out square. Then the team had to go direct for penalties, and team Fiorentina had to miss one. Then United scored all their 5 penalties. That means United were given the trophy. Remember, it is their actually the second trophy in the preseason. Remember, they did actually win what they call the summer series down in USA. They won that, and then they've won now again what we call the Snap actual trophy in there. Does it mean that United is coming back to their glory days, winning these ordinary trophies? The team really needs to have that competitiveness when it comes to win what we call the Premier League, the FA Cup, even the Carabao Cups of this world. That's what actually United is known of. Can Ruben Amorim assemble a very good team so that United wins all days? Is the $1 million question that everyone is trying to ask. Of course, he has been given that actual authority actually at United to see that he assembles a very formidable team. Of course, of other actual deadwood players actually at United. We have seen players like Marcus Rashford leaving actually joining Barcelona. We have seen players like Jadon Sancho not being actually at the Old Trafford for training. We have seen players like Garnacho, whom he said that he really needed to go away. We have seen him letting go of other big name players, Anthony's of this world. This is something that I thought Ruben Amorim being given that actually full authority over Manchester United. This team really needed to win trophies for now. Of course, they have spent actually over £200 million in the current actually summer transfer window. Of course, signing a number of good name players, the likes of Leon, actually Diego Leon, or actually they signed from Paraguay. There's a player that they signed in the names of Matthias Cunha from Wolverhampton Wanderers. They signed a player in the names of Brian Bremer from Brentford. And then the latest that they unveiled today in the game was actually a player in the names of Benjamin Sesko. What does this one mean for other players like Joshua Zirkzee? What does this one mean for a player in the names of Rasmus Haaland, who were not all in the starting actual lineup? Remember, they were not actually given that actual opportunity to play for United. This actually speaks volume. Does it mean that these players are leaving United for now? Of course, Rasmus Hojlund, he has come to Manchester United with a lot of expectation, but what we have come to know is that much of the United fans are not really much into what actually he's offering for the team. Of course, when he came from that team of Atalanta for United, he came with a lot of vigor. Everyone thought that he is coming into actually to see that he settled very fast in the team of United. Of course, he shows glimpses of being one of the elite title strikers that the current generation has seen, but of course, of the intensity of the Premier League, because of the media, even in terms of that pressure from the fans. Of course, this guy has as well as struggled coming in with his actual own philosophy, playing back three. He kind of suffers. He kind of takes long to adapt in that actual formation of Ruben Amorim in there. And Amorim thought it very well that he really need to have an elite striker in the name of Benjamin Sesko. He is already at United. So we're going to see how Ruben Amorim will be assembling a team with Benjamin Sesko actually at United. Of course, we've seen Ruben Amorim playing back three. That clearly states that the striker is someone who can hold the ball for you, and then he releases it to one of actually the attackers out from maybe players like Matheus Cunha, players like Brian Pep, who got one of the beautiful games for United today. So I think United has got a team that is capable of winning the Premier League, a team that's capable of winning the FA Cup in there. But there is one more thing that United needs to do. Of course, they really needed to have a defensive midfielder to see that once Ogata is out, a player has to come in. Once Kobe Mino is out, he really needs to step into the occasion. Once Kola is out, he needs to come in and step out of perfect for United. But that is the machine that United is lacking them. They talked about a number of good name players. They talked about Valencia's actually Javi Guerrero in there. Remember, this guy is still very young, 23 years old. He has been sensational for Team Valencia last season in the Spanish La Liga, contributing a number of performances for the team. Remember, this team was really doing badly in the Spanish La Liga, and with his presence actually in the midfield, he was really amazing to watch for Valencia in there. And Ruben Amorim and the United scouts thought very well that they really need to have him on board. See that he assembles perfect after United. But the latest we're getting indicates that this guy has signed another 4-year contract with Valencia. Expect Javi Guerrero not to come to United anymore. Of course, he has signed a 4-year contract with the United. Of course, United talked about Emerson of Atalanta. Of course, this is a good player, but the talent is he doesn't have that Premier League experience. Of course, you don't know how physical the Premier League is, and having a player in the name of Emerson will not be so quick in English football. And I think what United is trying to do is they're looking at Brighton and Hove Albion actually play in the names of Carlos Baleba. Remember, this is the biggest player currently that United is talking about, and everyone is actually vying for this guy's services. Of course, he is someone who is very, very much actually physical in there. He's really very good, and he was signed by a team in the names of Brighton as the direct replacement for Moises Caicedo, who crossed over to Chelsea Football Club way back actually in there. And this guy, Team Brighton, signed him from France League One in the team in the names of Lille. And this guy had just settled just 2 seasons with a team in the names of Brighton, and he is really doing extremely very well for Team Brighton and Hove Albion in the Premier League, and he still. Of course, Brighton is saying that this guy, if United needs him seriously, United has to pay a very big sum of money, about £100 million. Remember, United are willing to pay £90 million, then 10 million on add-ons. Remember, Manchester United fans have also go into lobbying. Of course, they're saying that they are going to actually fund a group to see that some money is raised, so that United really needs to sign this guy in the names of Carlos Baleba. Of course, he is really a very good player. This guy, if United actually signs him, he will be someone who can make that midfield set of Manchester United to look very competitive. Of course, he plays like he plays like N'Golo Kante. If you've seen N'Golo Kante play, if you've seen Moises Caicedo play, that is the caliber of a player in the names of Baleba in for you. Of course, he has got that category. That's that element of being strong on the ball. He is really a very good ball carrier. He can pick the ball from open, actually from close areas, and then he drives actually very fast with the ball. He is really very good when it comes to long balls in there. This is a player. If United signs him, probably United will be a team to watch in the Premier League. Of course, with what he's offering for Brighton Football Club last season, this guy probably would be a very great addition for Ruben Amorim. Of course, his back three needed to have a player of his shape. Of course, because he played with Lenny Geroh down in France in a team called Lille. Of course, they were in that team of Lille in there, and they were good friends with Lenny Geroh. Lenny Geroh can be a very big influencer in that deal. Of course, we have seen Andre Onana, his countermate down in Africa, Cameroon. He has got that influence of actually convincing this guy to come actually to United. Of course, United have got a very big project. See that they are a team that will be here to see that they really wanted to win the Premier League in the next actually 2 to 3 years. Of course, this year, if the project is actually right, the biggest is to see that this team comes back to European football. That's the biggest thing that has been set for Ruben Amorim. Top 6 is what actually the United hierarchy wants actually Ruben Amorim to finish in, and signing this guy, I think, will be the biggest. Of course, we all know this deal will be very hard actually to break in there. Of course, we have seen Newcastle United, we have seen teams like Brighton and Football being actually hard when it comes to signing players from them. It's not easy, probably. We have seen them signing Moises Caicedo to Chelsea Football Club for around 115 million pounds. That was a big actual amount of money. They sell just recently, they sold a player in the names of João Pedro to Chelsea Football Club for around 60 million pounds. Are you seeing the project that Team Brighton and Hove Albion is trying to do? Of course, this is the player that they signed for around only for 10 million pounds, 20 million pounds, and they are selling them at 100. They're selling them at 60. This business at Brighton is really so allied, and I can confirm to you, United would have to actually spend very big in that deal of Carlos Baleba. Of course, his agent says that they are ready actually to reduce their commission. Of course, they really wanted to see that this guy plays for United. Of course, the guy has said that yes to United. Of course, he said that he's open for playing United. Of course, this is a very big club, and this is one of the biggest opportunities for him to play in there. Playing for United is like you are playing for the best club in the world. Of course, United being a legendary club, every player wants to play for United, and the latest that I can also confirm to you is United is also looking at a goalkeeping option. One of them is a goalkeeper in the names of Geroh Donnarumma of Team Paris Saint-Germain. Remember, Team Paris Saint-Germain has actually got a new goalkeeper in the names of Lucas Xavier. Remember, they signed Xavier from a team in the names of Lille, and this guy has been given that priority of being the fastest goalkeeper at Team Paris Saint-Germain. Of course, Luis Enrique said that he doesn't want a player in the names of Geroh Donnarumma into his team. Of course, he said that this guy is not much good at ball distribution. He is earning a lot of money at Paris Saint-Germain, around 850,000 pounds per month. Just see this amount of money that the 26-year-old Italy international is earning at Team Paris Saint-Germain. Remember, he really wanted to stay put with Paris Saint-Germain, but they opted not to actually to renew his contract. Of course, he's having 1 year left on his contract. With the price that he's earning at PSG, I don't think that United will be there to to sign this guy. Of course, he said that he is willing to play for United. Can he be in position to actually to cut down his price and play for the Birds of United? Of course, we have seen United signing players who are. He is willing to play for United. He said yes to United. It's not down to Manchester United to sign him in there. Of course, he has got that experience of European football. But I think a player of his caliber, if he comes to United, he'll be a very good addition for United. Of course, he has got that confidence with the ball. He's very tall when it comes to aerial balls, and that has been one of the challenges for United. Of course, when it comes to set pieces, probably he could be one of the great players for United. Of course, at 26, I think he can offer something that United has been lacking. We all know how inconsistent Andre Onana has been for United. We all know how Badir has been for United in there. United doesn't have a stable goalkeeper ever since David De Gea left them. Of course, David De Gea has been praised at United of being a standout performer for United. Even if United is doing badly, David De Gea will always rise to the occasion and stop those goals from going at the back of the net. Donnarumma is the perfect one for United. Of course, United is also looking at a player in the names of Sane Lamens, who plays for Royal Antwerp. He is still very young, 23 years old, Belgium international. I think if United can be important to sign him as well, this guy is also an amazing player. Of course, he is a ball-playing goalkeeper, and his price tag is not that much. Of course, 17 million pounds. This money is kind of meager. United can splash this, and signing a player of his caliber can actually add something very, very good for United in there. Of course, signing players in what we call the Belgium League. These players have kind of established themselves very good. The goalkeepers. We have seen. If you have watched David Raya play, if you have watched Ramsdale play, that is the same way how this guy plays. I'm talking about confident, very calm on the ball distribution, excellence. When it comes to commanding the defense, very, very good. So I think either Donnarumma or as a player in the names of Arsene Lassem, these are real top goalkeepers. 8 of them can work very well for United, but if United really wanted to have that experience, the best option for them is Gianluigi Donnarumma. Can Manchester United and the board sign all these players? United will be a very good team to watch in there. Remember, they've kind of revamped their actual training ground. That's Carrington, that's recently. They have kind of improved it. The Carrington that Cristiano Ronaldo complained about is no more. The Carrington that Cristiano Ronaldo complained about is a new era at United, and this era is much known of transformation, making Manchester United great again. That's the project at United. I've talked much about United. Let's talk about Chelsea Football Club. The latest we're getting is Chelsea Football Club has been hit by injuries, and one of the latest is Lewy Colwell. Remember, Lewy Colwell has been one of the standout performance for Chelsea Football Club in the Premier League last season in what we call the CAF. I mean, in the UEFA Conference League, in the FIFA Club World Cup. He has really been so much actually interesting for Team Chelsea Football Club. Remember, in the training just recently, he got an Achilles ligament injury. You remember, that is a very bad injury to players. Once a player gets that injury, probably a player needs to have the surgery. That's when a player will not be having that playing time. Of course, this guy will miss majority of 2025-2026 English Premier League for Team Chelsea Football Club with this injury. Of course, the Premier League is set to start very soon. Of course, tomorrow will be the Caterpillar game between Liverpool and has won the FA Cup. That's always what we call the Caterpillar. It's called the Community Shield. The team that wins this one will be actually a team that will be good to go. Of course, winning that, open the season with the trophy, probably that team will be looking more ambitious to see that the team really needed to dominate again, to see that the Premier League always other trophies are kind of considered actually at the same level. Of course, we have seen Jose Felix Mourinho saying that all these trophies are trophies. Of course, we really need to win all these trophies. Of course, Liverpool winning this against Crystal Palace, I think, would be the biggest thing to talk about in there. Of course, Liverpool also talking about players in the team of Crystal Palace, the likes of Mark Guehi. Are we going to see all these players play in that team of Crystal Palace against Liverpool? If they play, probably could be Liverpool making amends about that in there. So the player I was talking about was Levi Colwill, and he will be out for a longer period of time in there. And Chelsea have set their actual eyes on Barcelona's actual centre back in the names of Araujo in there. Can Araujo be convinced to come actually at Chelsea Football Club? I don't think that Barcelona Football Club will be in position to let this guy go. Of course, Chelsea is ready to submit around 50 million pounds for this guy's services. That's Araujo for you. You remember, Araujo is not all that an elite defender. Of course, he makes mistakes for Barcelona Football Club last season. Of course, he has got that experience of playing for Barcelona Football Club for a number of years. I think him commanding that defense of Barcelona Football Club has been one of the most actually difficult things for Hans Flick actually at Barcelona. If you Inter Milan down in Italy, those goals came through playing the names of Red. Of course, he was not all that clinical, he was not all that commanding the defense very well, he was not all that aggressive with the ball. So Chelsea Football Club going for this guy is really a very big mess in my own view. Of course, he's not one of the best defenders that I've rated actually in European football. Of course, Araujo, I really don't buy this either. I don't know why Enzo Maresca is trying to actually to contemplate things for him. Of course, if he signed this guy, probably he could be seen that team of Chelsea Football Club leaking goals for fun. Of course, Manchester City got a very good defense. I mean, midfield that is very rich with the talented players, the Manchester Casinos of this world, the Romeo Lavies of this world, the Enzo Fernandez of this world. Yes, they can support him at the back, but this guy, when it comes to one-on-one situation, he is not a good defender. When it comes to error balls, he's not a good defender. When it comes to commanding the defense, he is not actually a good defender. When it comes to team play, he's good, but I have my reservations about this guy. And it will be very hard for Team Chelsea Football Club to convince Barcelona to sell this guy. Of course, we have seen Barcelona Football Club letting go one of their center backs in the names of Inago in Saudi Arabia in there. So it will be one of the biggest things. So probably Chelsea Football Club, with the new addition that they have got actually at their disposal, they have got Geroh Hato from Ajax already at their disposal, with the likes of Fofana at their disposal. I think this team of Chelsea Football Club is good to go. Other bills of this one, they are still there. Fofana, Chelsea Football Club, I think it doesn't matter of giving the priority to your team to see that you are kind of established when it comes to football in there. And let's talk about the other targets. They talked about Xavi Simons of RB Leipzig. Of course, RB are saying that if Chelsea is serious about this deal, they really need to pay around 60 million pounds for this guy. And they are saying talks about Alejandro Garnacho of Manchester United. Of course, the report saying that Garnacho has agreed personal terms with Chelsea Football Club, and it's only Chelsea Football Club talking club to club with Manchester United. Of course, Manchester United is saying that if Chelsea Football Club really wanted this guy, they should pay more than 50 million pounds. Of course, Chelsea is willing to pay 40 million pounds, and this is not yet going well with United. So it remains to be seen whether United will be important to sign all these players. But these players that Chelsea Football Club are signing, these are really good players. Of course, there are a number of players who are expected to leave actually Chelsea. One of them is Raheem Sterling. Is expected to leave Chelsea Football Club. Alex Disasi, one of the defenders, is expected to leave Chelsea Football Club. Then you have Renato Viega, also expected to leave Chelsea Football Club. Of course, Alex Disasi is a defender. Renato Viega is a defender. Can Chelsea Football Club contain these guys? Allow these guys to play leave a play in the names of Araujo. These players can do for you something very good. Of course, Renato Viega, I think he has got the potential of playing. He doesn't have the experience, but Alex Disasi as one of my best defenders for Chelsea Football Club last season. Of course, if I were to be Enzo Maresca, probably I may partner this guy in case he's fit. I'll partner him alongside Geroh Hato. Of course, these guys have got that physical brain in them. Of course, they're too much physical, and they can offer something very good for Chelsea Football Club. Keep them hold. Then other players that are set to leave Chelsea Football Club include Christopher Nkuku and then Nicolas Jackson. these are the players that Chelsea Football Club is set to lose them. So it will be something that we will be watching closely. Let's talk about Liverpool. We all know my time is going so fast. I'm left with only a few minutes to wind down the show. Liverpool Football Club, the latest that I'm getting indicates that Newcastle United has said that they are not going to let go a player in the name of Alexander Isak at ease. Of course, Alexander Isak has never played a game for Newcastle United in the pre-season training. Of course, he has been training alone in his actual parent club in the name of Real Sociedad, whereby Newcastle United signed him from. Of course, it was alleged that he had got a thigh injury actually to his name, and he has returned back to Newcastle United. And Liverpool submitted their first bid for this guy in the region of 120 million pounds, but Newcastle United rejected this deal. Of course, they said if Liverpool really wanted this guy, Liverpool should pay around 50 million pounds. You understand? So all these monies is now making this guy to become very furious at Newcastle United, and he was ready to leave Newcastle United and go to Liverpool. Of course, he said at Newcastle United, Newcastle should increase his actual salary to see that he signed for them. That's where the fracas started from for Alexander Isak actually at Newcastle United. Of course, Liverpool really being invested in him speaks volume. Of course, a player of his caliber deserves to play in a competitive club like Liverpool Football Club. If he goes into the team of Liverpool Football Club, this guy will be a dangerous player to watch. That's Alexander Isak for you. And at Newcastle United, with now they are actually saying that if he wants to go, they are not going to actually let him go. Of course, we have seen that Victor Gyökeres kind of a transfer trying to happen with Newcastle United. Of course, Newcastle United first want to get a striker first before they let go a player in the name of Alexander Isak. They are saying that they really doesn't want to lose him this summer. Probably in the next summer, that's when they can let him go. Of course, they really wanted to identify actually a target to see that the players needed to come on board to replace him actually at Newcastle United. And that has been one of the biggest things that I felt like I needed to tell you about this guy in the name of Alexander Isak, and he is really a very good player. If he goes to Liverpool, that's Alexander Isak for you. And at Newcastle United, if he still goes on strike, if he doesn't go for training, if he stays home, Newcastle will say that for losing this guy for free, we rather sell him. Of course, he still has got a 3-year contract with them. They come in to pounce him actually at the team, but they may be losing some sense, some amount of money in that regard. Of course, they have to pay him. Of course, he still have got a contract with them. Of course, he has the heart of leaving the club. Why can't they allow this guy to leave? Of course, he has done his part for them already. He has made the team qualify for the Champions League, and he wants another talent. Of course, he has played for Villarreal. For Real Sociedad. He has played for Newcastle United now. Now he wants to take another talent, playing for a team in the name of Liverpool. Seems to be on his radar, and allow him to go. Get the money. That's really a very big amount of money. You sign him that cheaply and sell him at around 120 million pounds. Then you add clauses to that deal. In the case of he wins trophies, you get more money. In the case he performs well, the club earns money. In the case Liverpool decide to sell him, the club also benefits. When you have this kind of strategies, probably this guy can add something very good for Newcastle United. Of course, we have seen Newcastle United now lacking strikers. Of course, Callum Wilson has left them, has crossed over to Arab money down in Saudi Arabia. Then they talked about signing a player in the names of Yohan Wissa from Brentford. So the talks are still ongoing. Of course, Newcastle United, the first one is to get a striker. Of course, they talked about Hugo Ekitike. They failed to sign. They talked about Benjamin Sesko that United has already unveiled. It's very hard for a team in the names of Newcastle United to convince strikers in there. But a striker in the name of Jan Witter, who is also into longer heads with the team Brentford, is also pushing hard to see that he really wanted to leave the club. Of course, his best friend in the name of Brian Bell was crossed over to United. So, crossing over to Newcastle United for another challenge is one of the biggest things that he is also trying to put forward at Brentford. Then they also talked about a player in the names of Samu Geroh of Team FC Porto. Remember, down in Portugal, he said to be the monster of Portugal. In Portugal La Liga in there. Of course, he plays like Sergio Queen Aguero. That's a player in the names of Samu Geroh. He scored a number of goals last season, around 20 plus goals in Portugal for Porto in there. And if this team can be important to sign a player in the names of Samu Geroh, it will be a good thing in my own view about Newcastle United. And let them just allow this guy to leave. Isaac, he has done his part. You never know. He may cross over there. He may not actually sign in there. He may flop down. And that's one of the beautiful things that with football, anything can be important to happen. Just get your money. 50 million pounds, always 150 million pounds, 130 million pounds. It's a very big amount of money. You can even go for Bamba things in there. Let's talk about the transfers in there, and that is making headlines in there. Southampton are holding latest 50 million bid for England winger Taylor Devlin, and Everton are really much into this guy. And Taylor Devlin has been one of the youngest players for Southampton in the recent years. Of course, he has actually proven himself to be an elite player for Newcastle United, and he is doing amazingly very well for Newcastle United. Problem, I think, if Newcastle United can be important to sign this guy in the names of Dublin or Everton, he can add something very good. I expect a team like Arsenal Football Club to go for this young guy. Of course, he has got that dribbling skills with him. He has got that trickery with him. He can open spaces actually up front. He can create those chances. He is really an amazing player, and he will not be playing in the championship with Southampton. Of course, Southampton was relegated. This guy is really an amazing player to watch. I think signing this guy is really something that I thought big clubs really need to go for him. Of course, he has got a very great potential. Still 21 years old, he can add something very good in there for that team of Newcastle or as Everton. Let's talk about Nicholas Jackson, and they are saying that he is set to stay. He would like to stay in the English Premier League, and Chelsea are willing to let him go. Of course, is Newcastle again, who are also interested in his services, and he's a striker. Of course, Newcastle is looking for a striker. Can Newcastle sign him? Is the $1 million question that everyone is asking. Of course, at Chelsea Football Club, apparently he will not be having that actual playing time. Of course, Chelsea has got Liam Delap actually at their disposal. Chelsea has got a striker in the names of Yao Pedro already. Can Nicholas Jackson bench all these players? Of course, these players are having great impact for State Football Club. I think it's high time that Nicholas Jackson needs to try it elsewhere. Of course, going to Italy, that's where I think he can be important to sign. Of course, we have seen other clubs in Italy looking for his services. Juventus is talking about him. Atalanta is talking about him. AC Milan, even including Napoli of this world, they're talking about him. And going to Italy is where I think this guy in the names of Nicholas Jackson can be a good player in that regard. And Atalanta, another forward, Abdullah Lukman, 27, is determined that Inter Milan, he got to force a move to Inter Milan. Of course, we have seen him making amends for Team Atalanta in there, winning the UEFA Europa League with the team is something is matter to appreciative in there. Of course, he was really a standard performer in that regard last season. The other season, of course, when Xavi actually Alonso was at the helm of Bayer Leverkusen, of course, he did see that this team managed to beat Bayer Leverkusen. And at that time, Bayer Leverkusen went unbeaten in all competitions. It was only Atalanta and Gasperini who managed to beat him in the finals of the UEFA Europa League finals. And it was Abdel Lukman, who rises to the occasion and he scored that's actually important goals for team Atalanta that time. I think this is something that is really worth appreciating, and going for another talent is the biggest thing that I think the Nigerian star can be in position to do. Of course, there were links about Arsenal talking about him, but Arsenal of late have turned their attention to playing the names of Brett Eze, whom Crystal Palace said they are not going to allow him to leave them. Of course, playing the names of Brett Eze will be staying put with Crystal Palace. If you're an Arsenal fan and you're watching us, don't expect a player in the names of Brett Eze crossing over to Arsenal Football Club. They talked about playing the names of Rodrigo from Real Madrid. He has signed another year with team Real Madrid already. 4 years contract. He will be staying put with the project that Xavi Alonso is trying to implement at Real Madrid. My time is up. I need to leave the studio for the next program to come in. It has been me, Senior Geroh, the host of the show. Let's catch up again next time. I'm out of here. Bye-bye.